This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, January 13th. This is Africa 54. 3 teachers in Kenya are killed during a suspected terrorist attack on a school. French president hosts West Africa's Sahel leaders to chart a roadmap in the fight against militants. And a look at why there's a delay in the corruption trial of former International Association of Athletics Federation's chief, Lamine Diack. We begin our broadcast tonight in East Africa, where suspected al-Shabab terrorists shot and killed 3 teachers in Kenya on Monday, near its border with Somalia, according to the police. The militants also burned down a police station in what appears to be the latest in a string of violent attacks by the extremists since the beginning of the new year. A stray bullet also wounded a child when the militants attacked Kamuthe Primary School in Garissa County, according to a police report. The terrorists also destroyed a telecommunications tower. The al-Qaeda-linked ally targets Kenya in frequent attacks as part of a retaliation campaign against the country for sending troops into Somalia in 2011 after a series of cross-border raids and kidnappings. 4 school children were killed last week during a gunfight between al-Shabab and local police in Garissa. The attackers also targeted a telecommunications mast in the assault.
If these guys are declaring war, let them know that we have also declared war on our side, and we'll go for them wherever they are hiding. And I can assure you, and it has started today, we have officers on the ground, and the instruction is that they should bring those guys either dead or alive.
The United States bolstered its presence in Kenya last week after al-Shabab killed 3 Americans in an attack on a military base used by U.S. and Kenyan forces. The leaders of Libya's rival governments met Monday in Moscow for peace talks. Russia's foreign ministry says both Fayez al-Sarraj, the head of the UN-backed government of national accord, and Khalifa Haftar, who commands the Libyan National Army, participated in the meeting. The Russian and Turkish officials are also participating in the push for peace in Libya, which is struggling with instability since the death of longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi. The situation is growing more contentious in recent months as Haftar launched an offensive aimed at capturing Tripoli. The United Nations, Arab League, and European Union are urging both sides fighting for power to abide by the ceasefire that began Sunday. Al-Sarraj's government says no truce can succeed unless Haftar withdraws his forces from the outskirts of Tripoli.
We all know a ceasefire, yes, it is a first step in the right direction. But what you need is a building process for reconciliation, for reconstruction, and for a government of unity in Libya. This is a long way to go, and this has to be a UN-led process. This is of utmost importance.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recep Erdogan, who support different sides, spent the week calling for the truce. Turkey began deploying soldiers last week to back the government's forces, while Russia has reportedly sent mercenaries to support Haftar's fighters. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli says it is seriously concerned about toxic foreign interference in the conflict. But some European leaders are worried about Libya turning into a second Syria. The G5 summit of West African leaders is underway on Monday in southwestern France after being postponed from December 16th because of an attack claimed by the Islamic State in Niger that killed 71 Nigerian soldiers. French President Emmanuel Macron is hosting the summit in Pau and meeting with the leaders of Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger and Chad. France, the former colonial power, has the West's largest military presence, at least 4,500 troops waging counterinsurgency operations in Mali and the wider Sahel region. Despite the deployment of French forces, security is getting progressively worse, with militants linked to the French al-Qaeda and Islamic State terror groups gaining a deeper foothold across the region. The areas and the territory are virtually ungovernable, and ethnic violence is rising, especially in Mali and Burkina Faso. Now, in 2013, French troops were hailed as heroes for preventing an Islamist push to the Malian capital, Bamako, but now they are being accused of failing to restore stability and for only being in the region for economic reasons. For the latest on the G5 summit in France, reporter Daniel Gillet is standing by live via Skype in Pau. Good evening, Daniel.
Hi, good evening.
Now, what measures are the leaders proposing to improve security in the Sahel?
Well, for now, the summit just started. President Macron just welcomed the 5 presidents in the castle of Pau, so they're going to talk. We are guessing that they're going to talk about more collaboration, more means, and trying to implicate more countries from the European Union and the United Nations.
Now, Daniel, even as the summit kicks off, we are learning that there are street demonstrations in Burkina Faso and also in Mali. What do we know about these demonstrations?
Well, we know that there's a feeling that France is not doing a job correctly. We know that France is trying to do his best, but is failing. So President Macron is trying to find more legitimacy with the G5 presidents to know if they are still behind him.
Daniel, what are the leaders of the Sahel now asking for? What kind of assistance do they expect from France?
Well, the summit just started, so I haven't heard them yet talking about what they want, but I guess they want more means, more engagement from the French army.
We're breaking up a little bit, but Daniel, I hope that you can hear me now. Does the public in the Sahel region...
Yes, I do.
Right. So does the public have confidence that this summit is going to yield something tangible to quell the crisis that we are witnessing in the Sahel?
Well, what is for sure is that there's a lot of hope in the Sahel region because among the United Nations, there were a huge increase, 5-time increase of attacks in the Sahel, and there's 4,000 people who died in 2019. So the hopes are big, but it's up to the G5 Sahel and President Macron to decide what they have to do to stop this.
Daniel, you've been reporting about the Sahel region for quite some time. What are the major concerns of the public? Because they are seeing increased attacks that started way last year and have continued even at the beginning of this year.
Yes, so they are looking for more security and more protection from the local governments and from the French army, and being more proficient to fight against the fights with the terrorist attacks.
Right. Thank you, Daniel, for reporting for us. Daniel Gillet reporting live via Skype from the G5 summit in Pau, France. In Central Africa, Boko Haram continues to exploit high unemployment to recruit new fighters in Cameroon along the Nigerian border. To counter those efforts, some charity groups are now offering training for unemployed youth to help them start their own businesses. Moki Edwin Kinzeka has our report.
20-year-old Bazaye Omar says members of the Nigerian jihadist group Boko Haram attacked her village Amchide 2 years ago. They killed her mother and tried to recruit her.
They came to the neighborhood and told people that if we follow them, they'll give us money to go and work with them.
Some of the unemployed Cameroonian youth in her village joined Boko Haram, but Umar refused. She had just started a job training program and says the hope of steady income gave her courage to reject the terrorist group. Analysts say Boko Haram's attacks on villages along Nigeria's border have crippled the local economy, increasing joblessness and making it easier for the militants to recruit. But charity groups like the Catholic Mission of Marwa are fighting back with job training centers for locals.
This training helps all of us. It encourages us to stay in the village. This is our village. We cannot leave our village to go into the bush. With this work, we can buy food and medicine.
Cameroonian security expert Ntuda Ebode applauds the program's goal, but says they should be moved away from the border until the area is secured.
It's not good to train them and leave them there in a context where recruitments continue. And the distance to move from one country to another is too little. There's always a high risk they will find themselves caught again, either as a hostage or as a voluntary recruit.
But charity coordinators maintain that improving the local economies is a major deterrent for Boko Haram's recruiting efforts and requires creating jobs locally. Local leaders agree and say they want to see more programs for skills training and job placement.
We feel that they have made efforts, but it is very low, both in terms of the selection process and creating employment. It's so small. Even funding from organizations, some get it, but there are many who do not.
Over 400 villagers have so far received the job training since programs began in 2017 in Cameroon's far north region. For Anne Zwanke in Amchide, Cameroon, Moki Edwin Kinzeka for VOA News.
Officials in Malawi are set to probe bribery attempts in an alleged voting fraud case. Malawi's anti-graft body on Monday said it is launching an inquiry into attempts to bribe judges hearing a case linked to a controversial election which handed President Peter Mutharika a second term. The opposition Malawi Congress Party and the United Transformation Movement both say the election last May was marred by fraud. Opposition leaders say the result sheets were tampered with and have petitioned the nation's top court to annul the results. Mutharika defeated MCP party candidate Lazarus Chakwera by nearly 160,000 votes. A ruling is expected at the end of January. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a delay in the corruption trial of former IAAF chief Lamine Diack. You're watching Africa 54, and we'll be right back.
Is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them and bringing
their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
People, now you ready to ride? Remix, Mr. Flavor, Valley Dance Hard, and a shower remix. What you gonna continue? All my ladies, all my ladies.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Lani Adeoye is putting finishing touches on a sculpture at a studio in Lagos. She's the brain behind Studio Lani, a boutique product design brand that incorporates traditional African designs into functional furniture and interior designs. The interior architect trained in New York and started making contemporary African pieces in 2013. She says she wants to take advantage of opportunities in the sector to create a niche for herself. Adeoye's work is inspired by various traditional and modern African themes. A notable inspiration, she says, is the traditional Yoruba musical instrument, the bata drum. Next up, not all of us can tell when a plant needs more water, less light, or perhaps is too warm. That's why Luxembourg-based Mu Design has created the Lua Smart Plant Pot, to give greenery an animated face. Emotions, such as thirsty, sick, or cold, are displayed on a digital screen in the front of the pot. An accompanying app lets users browse settings for the pot, generating information specific to that plant. The pot itself is fitted with sensors to monitor moisture, light, and temperature. And finally, after last week's Golden Globes, the Critics' Choice Awards red carpet was slightly understated, but still glamorous. From metallics to sequins to leather accents, the fashion choices were as varied as they were chic, and with no clear standout trends. The Critics' Choice Awards are known for giving a good indication of who might be awarded Oscars in February, but they may also give us a hint at what the rest of 2020's red carpets may bring. And that's what's trending today.
The White House is voicing strong support for Iranian protesters who took to the streets to decry the shutdown of a Ukrainian commercial jetliner outside Tehran last week. VOA's Michael Bowman reports the Trump administration faces continued bipartisan pressure from Congress to provide more details on the intelligence that prompted the U.S.'s targeted killing of an Iranian general, as Democrats seek to rein in the president's ability to unilaterally order military action against Iran.
In Tehran, last week's protests against the killing of Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani have been replaced by demonstrations expressing sorrow and anger over what the government admits was an accidental shootdown of a Ukrainian passenger jet, killing all on board. Amid the upheaval gripping Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump weighed in Sunday, tweeting, quote, "To the leaders of Iran, do not kill your protesters. Thousands have already been killed or imprisoned by you, and the world is watching. More importantly, the USA is watching."
This has not been a good week for the Iranian regime, that's for sure.
National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien told ABC's This Week the administration doesn't want war, but will continue pressuring for change in Iran.
We're going to support human rights. The best thing we can do for the Iranian people and for the world is to continue our maximum pressure campaign to ensure that the Iranian regime never obtains a nuclear weapon, stops their terrorist activities in the region, and cuts back on their ballistic missile program.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats and some Republicans are dissatisfied, alleging the White House has failed to provide evidence justifying the missile strike that killed Soleimani in Iraq.
The president has made several erratic and impulsive decisions when it comes to foreign policy that have made Americans less safe, put even more American forces in harm's way.
Last week, the Democrat-led House of Representatives voted to limit Trump's war powers in Iran. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also spoke on ABC.
Congress has the power to declare war. We have to move toward peace, not escalation of war.
Appearing on CBS's Face the Nation program, U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said he didn't see intelligence showing an imminent Iranian threat to U.S. embassies before the deadly strike on Soleimani was ordered, but that he shared the president's view that American installations were in danger. On ABC, National Security Advisor O'Brien said evidence exists that can't be made public so as to protect America's intelligence gathering capability. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
There is no doubt that many people around the world see in magazines and social media unrealistic beauty standards and end up feeling unhappy with how they look. But Jessamine Stanley has never let her body image get in the way of her dream to teach yoga. Karina Bafraziani has more from Savannah, Georgia.
Jessamine Stanley has two jobs when she enters a yoga studio, teaching people about yoga and teaching people about the human body.
To get into yoga with me, it was mostly people being like, I didn't know fat people could do yoga. And I was just like, why do you think fat people can't do yoga? Fat people do all kinds of things all the time.
Jessamine Stanley is happy with how she looks. She loves her life and is busy working hard teaching people to do the same. But it took her some time to accept this worldview. For years, the North Carolina resident believed her weight would prevent her from building the career of her dreams.
The yoga practice is really meant for everyone. White, slender-bodied, cisgender, heterosexual person, usually a woman, usually wealthy. If we're not in that bubble, then we think it's not for us.
But at some point, Stanley realized it wasn't the fashion magazines or the TV. She herself didn't believe she could fulfill her dream. So she decided to be kinder to herself and accept herself the way she was. And in no time, her life started changing. Despite what she had thought, her yoga practice got immensely popular, and large companies like Kodak and Samsung were asking her to collaborate with them.
Because she's different. She doesn't look like what people typically think of as someone that does yoga. She's different. She embraces her difference. She talks about her belly. She talks about breasts. She talks about all those things that we generally don't talk about in yoga class, but it's real and it's raw, and we need that.
She's very approachable. She has a very organic approach to instruction, so nothing she says in class is intimidating.
Today, yoga remains in some places a pricey form of exercise, but Stanley hopes to make it more affordable. To do that, she has made a smartphone app called The Underbelly that has practice videos galore.
I wanted to name it after what I see to be the softest part of ourselves, the part that we're most likely to hide, but it's actually the part that provides the most strength.
Stanley hopes that her example will inspire other women to get rid of prejudices towards themselves and fight against stereotypes. Karina Bafraziani for VOA News, Savannah, Georgia.
It's time for our Monday Sports Report, and Sandy Shomari is here to tell us about the London Marathon. Sunday, hello.
Hello, Esther. It's Monday. And in marathon news, women world record holder Bridget Kosgei of Kenya will return to defend her title at this year's London Marathon, according to race organizers. Kosgei retained her Chicago Marathon crown last October in 2 hours, 14 minutes and 4 seconds to break Briton Paula's Radcliffe's 16-year-old 25-year-old world mark, and Kosgei's record-breaking run came 6 months after the 25-year-old won London Marathon for the first time, and she is eager to come back and lead an elite lineup of Kenyan runners. Fellow Kenyan and world record holder Eliud Kipchoge, who broke the 2-hour mark in an official event last October, has confirmed that he will be defending his London title. Justin Chepkosgei, the 2019 New York City Marathon champion, will also feature on the starting line in London. The 2020 London Marathon will take place on April 26th. And switching gears to Paris, the disgraced former head of the athletic governing body, IAAF, Lamine Diack, is being tried in France on charges of corruption and money laundering in June, after proceedings were adjourned earlier today. Investigation into cover-ups, extortion, and bribe-taking in world athletics. The judge's decision comes a month after financial prosecutors formally accused Diack and his son, Papa Massata, of a host of illicit practices over a period of years with the active involvement of international athletes and their federations. Diack, who led the IAAF from 1999 to 2015, was one of the most influential men in athletics, and his son have repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Prosecutors began the investigation in 2015, shortly after the IAAF's Ethics Commission and the World Anti-Doping Agency uncovered evidence a Russian marathon runner paid $600,000 to cover up a positive drug test, allowing her to compete in the London 2012 Olympic Games. According to the prosecutors, Diack and his son, who oversees a sports consulting business called Black Tidings, solicited payments from athletes, either directly or indirectly, totaling 3.45 million euros in exchange for covering up positive doping tests and allowing athletes to go on competing. And race organizer says Portuguese motorbike rider Paulo Goncalves has died after crashing during the 7th stage of Sunday's Dakar rally. The 40-year-old suffered the fatal accident after 276 kilometers of the day's ride from Riyadh to Wadi Al Dawasir. Goncalves was competing in his 13th edition of the Dakar. He made his debut in 2006 when it was staged in Africa and took second to Mark Coma in 2015 in South America. The Indian-backed hero rider only made it to this year's first Dakar stage in Saudi Arabia after recovering from a fractured spleen in a crash in Portugal in December. Goncalves was in 46th place in the overall bike standards after Friday's 6th stage. And that wraps our sports for today. Esther, back to you.
Our condolences. Very, very sad news to end up with in Sports Sunday. Thank you so much.
That's for sure.
All right. Be sure to join Sunday Shomari next Monday for another sports report right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to join us again on Africa 54 and on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.